In this video I want to show you how to generate the project documentation for different variants of the EPLAN sample project. Therefore I need the project builder of EPLAN Cogineer. First, I have to select the target project I want to generate in. Right now it is empty. After that, I can select the configurator that contains the data for all possible variants of the project. Here you can see the different options that are available. First, I generate the basic variant without any additional options. When the generation is executed successfully, you will get this message. As you can see, there are a lot of new pages in the target project. They contain schematics for the drives, PLC controls, and other parts of the grinding machine. I focus on the power supply. This is the basic variant. Now I select the option, Measuring Transformer. Let's generate the configuration again. When the generation is finished, I will open the same page again, and you can see how the schematic changed according to the configuration. The generation was successful. As you can see, the measuring transformer is fully integrated in the schematic. It's not necessary to do modifications. Okay, now I want to have a lighting and a receptacle in the enclosures. I select them in the configurator. I can do the same for all the options here. After that, I just hit the Generate Configuration button, and all functions that are selected in the configurator will be automatically generated in the schematic. The configuration is generated successfully. Now let's see where we can find the receptacles in the lighting. There is a new structure element in the page navigator. And there they are. This is enclosure number 1. And this is enclosure number 2. Again, the functions are fully integrated in the schematic. This is how the project builder works. You don't need expert skills in engineering. Just select what you need, and the project builder will automatically generate the according project documentation. Now let's see what is defined in the designer of EPLAN Cogineer to make that possible. For this part of the video I open the project builder and the designer next to each other. On the left-hand side of the designer you can find the sidebar. Let's have a look at the tab, Configurators. Here you can see the configurator that we used in the project builder a minute ago. It contains a typical group. In the navigator on the right-hand side of the designer, you can find all elements that you have created in the sidebar before. Okay. Now let's switch to the tab Typical Groups. The typical group is used to create the user interface in the project builder. In the upper section you can find several configuration variables. The display names of these variables are shown in the project builder. At the top you can recognize the options that we used in the first part of the video. In the lower section, you can see the macro typicals that are part of this typical group. The values that are set for the configuration variables in the project builder are handed over to these macro typicals. Most of the variables are of type Boolean, which means that they can have two possible states, yes or no. The fifth variable is of type integer, which means you can choose a number. In our example it is used to determine the number of receptacles that should be available in enclosure number 2. The other configuration variables are connected to the macro typicals below in exactly the same way. Now let's have a look at the macro typicals. I switch to the tab Macro Typicals and close the project builder. Macro typicals contain all the macros that are used to generate the schematic. This is the power supply. At the top you can see the configuration variable that is used for the option, Measuring Transformer. The first two macros in the list are always active. It's a basic page the other macros will be placed on and the basic power supply, without any additional option. The third one is the measuring transformer that I selected in the project builder. If you don't set a value for this variable, the macro will not be used during the generation of the schematic. That's it. Let's have a look at the lighting and the receptacles. Again, you can see the configuration variables that are used for the different options. The first macro, the basic page, is only used when the lighting or the receptacle for enclosure 1 is selected. The second one contains the enclosure light. The third one is the power supply for the receptacle. And the fourth macro contains the receptacle itself. That's all for enclosure number 1. The next macro is the basic page for enclosure number 2. It is used when the lighting or at least one receptacle is selected. The following two macros are the same as for enclosure number 1. They contain the enclosure light and the power supply for the receptacle. They are used when the related options are selected. The last three macros contain the partial circuit for the receptacles. The first one is used if only one receptacle is selected, like I did it in the first part of the video. The second one is used if two receptacles are selected. The last one is used if all three possible receptacles are selected. In addition, a position is defined for the last two macros. All three receptacles are placed on the same page next to each other. Therefore the x-coordinate is modified. Otherwise they will be placed on top of each other. The other macro typicals are defined in the same way. In this part of the video I want to show you how the macros are structured, that I used in the designer of EPLAN Cogineer. First I want to show you the macros that I used to generate the power supply. This is the result of the generation. In the macro typical, these three macros are used to generate this page. Okay, now let's have a look at the macro project where the macros are stored. This is the empty basic page the other macros are placed on. Then there is a macro that contains the basic schematic for the power supply. As you can see, the measuring transformer is missing. The third one contains the measuring transformer and is placed on top of the basic macro. That's it. Okay. Now let's have a look at the lighting and the receptacles. In the according macro typical there are 10 macros that are used to generate all possible variants of this part of the sample project. I'm going through all of these macros and you will recognize that all of them contain just one small function. The variance of your product has a direct influence on the granularity of the macros. The more functions are optional, the more and the smaller macros you will need. The other parts of the project are structured in the same way. Optional parts are saved in separate macros, and their dependencies are defined in the macro typicals.